morning, and welcome to our webinar, Is It Time to Factor Replacement for Next Year? My name is Sonia Hugnew. I'm the Director of Business Development for Predictive Technology, and I'll be your presenter today. I want to first get started by showing you a short video that really just talks about who predictive technology is. Predictive Technology was founded in 2003 and has been based in Omaha, Nebraska since 2003. We're right in the center of the city, so we are here in Omaha, but we are actually a national and global firm. So we have done work, installations, and sold products in 47 states in the U.S. and actually 8 countries globally. So our reach is pretty far, being right here in the center of the country. We also have a great team on staff. So we are a small business, 9 people. We have 4 service technicians. Our service techs have been with us for years and years and years, and they are just really experts in the field. Anything that we're going to discuss today, our service technicians know it, understand it, can speak to it, and can probably install and service it. So they are very knowledgeable. And then we have a team of sales professionals here to help find solutions for you. And as your turnkey partner, we like to say we are turnkey because we can provide everything from the rack to the cooling to the hardware to UPS, backup power, your generator. You want a monitor, we've got that. So really, we are a full service provider when it comes to critical facility, industrial, any sort of industry that has a data closet or has any sort of data needs. We are your full service provider for those. We partner with really, really great suppliers in the industry. So as you're looking through some of these suppliers, you're going to notice these are all suppliers at the top of their game. When we're talking about power, we're really focusing on Eaton and Vertiv. When we're talking about generators, Blue Star and Generac. When we're talking about batteries, we're looking at EnerSys and some of these other big names. Cooling, we've got some of the most industry-leading and technologically advanced partners in the industry. So we'd like to keep our partner list small so that we can really speak to everything. We're very particular about who we work with. So obviously today we're going to be talking about end of life. And one thing we always want to touch on is, why should we care that a product is at end of life? If it appears to be operating correctly, why do I need to consider replacing it? There are some, obviously, if your system is operating correctly, that is one thing. But there are certain things that actually have a danger component to them. The biggest thing being batteries, and that's what we're really going to talk about. When you think of batteries, there's a lot of dangers that can come with them. And, there are batteries in your UPS. You look at your generator is attached to usually a fuel line. You need to make sure that is adequate and okay. So there's just a lot of dangers that can come if you're not aware of how old your unit is and how your unit's performing. So some of the main dangers are going to be overheating, fires, explosions. So these first 3 are very focused on batteries. So as batteries age, they can overheat, they can bubble and warp. If they bubble and warp too much, they can then cause fires. And then in worst case scenarios, and very extreme scenarios, fires and explosions can occur from batteries. But it isn't something that has never happened. So again, we just want people to take note of what is that end of life, when is end of life, and what should I be looking for. And that's what we'll really talk about today. One of the other ones, so we're going to talk about poor performance. So you may say, well, my unit's doing okay. When I first put it in, when I first put my UPS system in, I was getting about 45 minutes of runtime, and now I'm only getting about 20, and I guess that's all right. Well, you think about it, that's half of what you were getting when you initially put the system in. So you have to think through, Is that 20 minutes enough? And then are you really okay with your system only performing at 50%? Because some people, they may be okay. Some, that may not be acceptable. So just looking at the performance component of it, and then again, as we just discussed, reduced runtime. That's a big one when you look at UPS's batteries. And then even generators, when you're looking at generators not operating appropriately or correctly, you can get some issues with the transfer switch, how long they run, how quick they start. There's just a lot of big issues that can occur with generators too, and we will talk about all of that. And then alerts and alarms. So the last thing you're going to see is as your system starts getting to its end of life and not performing correctly, you'll see the poor performance, you'll see reduced runtime. Hopefully you don't see overheating, fires, and explosions, but you can. But your system is going to start alerting and alarming. There's going to be components and parts of the systems that are going to need replaced, serviced, maintained, looked at. So you just want to be very cognizant of if you're getting alerts and alarms, which we always recommend monitoring for any sort of critical facility system, that you're paying attention to those alerts and alarms. You know, one thing we always like to cover, Uptime Institute releases this report every year and it talks about downtime for the industry. So downtime is actually going in the wrong direction. So some really crazy and scary stats for critical facility managers. So in 2021, nearly 30% of outages lasted longer than 24 hours. This is compared to 8%. So it is up 24%, more than 24 hours of it for an outage. That's a long time to be down. Think of if you're a financial institution, you can't do anything in 24 hours. Imagine everything's set on pause. You know, you think of a corporation, they can't do any business in 24 hours. Like some of these things just aren't acceptable. And you just got to keep an eye. And, you know, a lot of times equipment being at end of life is a huge cause of downtime. It's also becoming more expensive. So more than 60% of failures resulted in $100,000 in total losses. It's almost double, up from 39% in 2019. When you think about the total losses, we're not just talking about we couldn't do business for a day, so we lost this and this. You have to also think of the manpower and the hours that you're now shifting from normal operations to fixing this critical error or critical incident. So there is just a huge cost equated to downtime, and a lot of times it's lost production, lost revenue, manpower reallocation, and in addition, sometimes hardware costs, because you will have to do replacements if there's a major downtime issue. And then the biggest one, and again, it kind of leads into what we're going to talk about with our backup power, but the most significant outages are usually tied to electrical equipment, especially UPSs. So again, we're just going to talk about how you can monitor and watch those UPSs so you don't have any downtime issues. Let's first start, we're going to talk about backup power. So again, we're going to start with UPSs, uninterruptible power supplies, if anyone isn't aware of that acronym. When we walk into a facility and we're talking to you about end of life, or we're looking at a UPS, these are some of the questions we're going to ask. And we'll go through questions like this for each component of all your systems so that you know what to look for. And then at the end, we actually do have a great checklist that you can go through your facility and run through these questions and determine if any of your equipment is at end of life. But if we're looking at a UPS, we're going to see, is it greater than 15 years old? Usually 15 years is about the lifespan of a UPS. And again, that varies based on how much load you have on it, how you're using it, the power supply. Have you had any power issues? Have you had any issues with your UPS? There's so many factors. So again, keep in mind, this is very high level. Are any of your UPSs at greater than 80% capacity? It is never recommended to load your UPS more than 80%. That is definitely the maximum. So we'll want to look, is that happening? And if it is happening, then we will definitely recommend you either need a new UPS or maybe we need to add in a dual redundant system. So you have two UPSs splitting that load. Are you needing to plug more items into your UPS? So if you're good, you're sitting at, 50% capacity, but you're like, oh yeah, we're getting two new switch gears and a whole nother array over here. Well, how much is that going to add to that UPS, and can that UPS handle it? So we're definitely going to talk through those items. We're going to ask, have you experienced any runtime issues? Have you had any situations where your runtime hasn't been as long as you thought? And then has your UPS crashed within the last year? So that's a big one. Like, have you had a crash with the actual UPS? Because if so, there's going to be something going on and we'll need to investigate. And really, if you answered yes to any of these questions, you may need to consider preventative maintenance, which we highly recommend, and or replacing the unit. So these are things we'll walk through with you. Connected to your UPS, obviously your UPS is only going to provide so much runtime. Most systems are always going to have an EVM external battery module attached to them. So when we're looking at your batteries, any sort of battery needs to be replaced every 3 to 5 years. That is industry standard. If your batteries are 5 years old, we're hoping you got a purchase order into us and we're about to replace them, because after 5 years, batteries just do not perform as they should. You know, just the fact of life. So one thing we're going to look at when we're looking at your UPS is how old are your EVMs? Are any of them 3 to 5 years old? You know, we usually recommend at year 3, you start looking at budgeting in for the following year or even the next year, pricing for it. So we give budget numbers. We can give you budget numbers as to what it's going to cost you to replace batteries, so you can kind of prepare for it. Have you experienced any runtime issues? Has a UPS or EVM crashed in the last year? You know, has your UPS carried the load, but maybe you've had some issues with one of your EVMs or your batteries? Has any of your EVMs overheated, or do they have a wavy exterior or show signs of warping? We recently pulled some EVMs out of a customer's closet that had been there a little too long. And when we opened up the UPS and EVMs, the batteries inside were actually wavy and bubbled. And what that showed us was those batteries were overheating. And if those batteries were left to their own devices for another few years, those batteries could have caught fire. Or even in just the right scenario, those batteries could have just, perfect storm, caught fire. So again, if you answered yes to any of these, we'll talk about preventative maintenance and or replacement. And then really closely tied to your UPS and your EVMs is the generator. So, if your facility has a generator, these are some things you're going to need to look at. And if you don't have a generator, we are here to help you talk about one, because we really do believe that a generator is a huge, important part of backup power. Your EVMs and UPSs can carry you for so long, but if you have an extended power outage, like we talked about, greater than 24 hours, how many was that, 37%? The generator will carry you through that. So we're going to talk about, is your generator older than 15 years old? Generator is about the same as a UPS. You're going to get about 15 years of lifespan out of that generator. You obviously can get more. It's like a car. If you take good care of it, you can get better mileage out of it. So if you take really good care of your generator, you service it, you maintain it, you do preventative maintenance, you do all the things you're supposed to do, you might be able to go further. But if you don't, 15 years, that's all you're getting. You have to look, has your generator crashed? Has your transfer switch dropped a load or not transferred correctly? A lot of times, the biggest issues occur with those transfer switches, so that is definitely something we always like to look at. And then, has your runtime, so if your generator is supposed to carry you for, 28 hours, is that how long it's carrying you? Have you had to use it that long? And then also, are you currently using a manual transfer switch? So we have a lot of customers that we've talked to that are like, we need to switch to an automatic transfer switch. The manual switch is too difficult. We have too many problems with it. So we always recommend an automatic transfer switch to be used. So these are just some things with generators that to keep in mind. And we're here, we can provide generators. We can also provide service for generators. It is recommended. There's a whole fire code in regards to generators. So the fire marshal actually monitors these. So we have a service team that can come out and help service your generators. They can repair things as needed or just do preventative maintenance. So let's just for a second touch on batteries and battery monitoring. So again, we talked about EVMs. Well, EVMs and batteries are the same thing. EVMs are usually going to be a little smaller, so they're going to have multiple smaller batteries in them. The batteries I'm talking about on this slide are going to be a little bit of the bigger batteries in bigger facilities. So again, same questions though. Are your batteries 3 to 5 years old? Have you experienced any runtime issues? Have you dropped a load? Have you experienced overheating? Do you have any thermal runaway concerns? So when we're talking about a bigger battery cabinet, thermal runaway is actually where one battery will overheat, and because all of these batteries are daisy chained or connected together, if that one battery overheats, it's like a fire. It just spreads through the other batteries. So one overheating battery can cause all the batteries to overheat. And thermal runaway can be really dangerous because if you think of a chain of batteries overheating, that's just one big hot mess of a line, and that can cause fires very, very quickly, much more quickly than a smaller battery overheating. So thermal runaway is a huge concern. So if you have any overheating batteries, you got to get those replaced immediately. And then do any of the batteries have the wavy exterior or show warping? Again, that's a big sign that something is wrong. And then for those of you who are actually monitoring, so we're talking about the batteries and thermal runaway. Battery monitoring helps you actually monitor the batteries. You know their temp, you know their current, their voltage, you know how they're performing, you know if there's a battery that's really not performing as it should. So, hey, I need to replace it. Battery monitoring has actually been shown to extend the life of batteries because you actually see how they're performing. So when you're looking at battery monitoring, when you need to replace it, you kind of want to look at, have you experienced overheating? Have you had any thermal runaway concerns? Are your batteries being replaced every 3 years? That's a big one again. Are your batteries running at max efficiency according to your battery monitoring? And then also just to think, some people are doing battery monitoring, but not monitoring each individual battery. They might only be monitoring the string. And all of our systems that we sell, we can actually get down to each individual battery and monitor that. So it's something to ask yourself, hey, do I want to monitor each individual battery? Moving on to leak detection. So if you are going to put leak detection in your facility, we love leak detection. There's no recurring software. We have wireless devices. So leak detection is going to be there to really, it's a cabling that's laid around your facility, and it can actually detect water or chemicals. And there's a bunch of different water and chemicals it can detect. And it just sends a wireless signal back to a device that will actually alarm and tell you exactly where on the cable. So it'll say at 77 feet, cable 10, location A, leak. And so you can go right there to that spot, find the source of the leak, and fix it immediately before there's any bigger concerns. But leak detection does need to be replaced pretty frequently. So one of the things we're going to talk about is, if we're talking about your leak detection and thinking, do I need to replace it or factor replacement for next year? We're going to ask, have you performed preventative maintenance within a year? Have you done a water test? And what we mean by that is if you have water leak detection, have you had someone put some droplets of water on the cable in a few different spots and see the system detect it? Are you making sure the system's working? Because you can't just leave it and hope it works. You need to go through and kind of test it every once in a while. And then has the cabling been inspected within the last year to make sure there's no fraying or any, cuts or missing areas of the cable where that's going to cause an issue? Have you scheduled preventative maintenance? That's a big one. And then one of the biggest things to know is when you need to replace. So is your environment a clean or dirty area? So are you putting it in an art gallery? If so, that's a clean area. So you need to replace those cables about every 2 to 4 years. Is your area dirty or like a manufacturing facility? If so, then you need to replace the cabling every 1 to 2 years. Not the full system, just the cabling. And now we're going to talk about software. So software is huge, and a lot of times the reason we're talking about software, because you think, well, hardware, yes, it's got an end of life. But if you think about software in the same way, it also has an end of life. You may have bought a software solution 10 years ago, and at that point it did everything you needed it to do. But now your organization has evolved, and now you have different needs. And is that software meeting those needs, and is it providing the information you need? So we always look at software, and we're going to ask you, have you performed the required updates from the software manufacturer? A lot of times when software gets at end of life, because there is a thing where companies will just stop doing updates for software. They don't want to make it anymore. They're not doing it. And once you can't get those updates anymore, it's not going to perform correctly. So have you been getting the required updates? Have you been doing them? Are you receiving the data you need? So is this software actually meeting your needs like we talked about? Is the software communicating to all your devices? So obviously, software made 10 years ago isn't going to be created equal to software made today. And so are all the devices being communicated to correctly? Are the reporting features meeting your needs? Again, 10 years ago versus now, reporting is completely different. So there are new features now that are 10 times better than what they were 10 years ago. Have you done a user audit? So this is huge. We always talk to people about this. Hey, have you gone into your software or into your monitoring devices, and are there any users with access to it that no longer work there? We always forget people leave, you have to activate their key card to the building, but like, do they still have access to the software? Do they still have a username and a login? Have you done a user audit? It's huge. And then have you done a device audit? So a lot of times you're going to have so many devices in there. Are all of those still active and live? So just looking at the device audit and making sure, that you don't have extra stuff on there that you don't need. And one of the things we kind of talked about is these are things we'll ask, but if you answered no to any of these questions, you may need to consider a software upgrade or a software change. And we've got plenty of solutions that can help you for that. So that's really it for today. I promised you earlier, this is our system lifespan checklist. So if you scan this QR code, you will go right to a page where you can download this system lifespan checklist. It's a free download. You don't need to input any information. You'll just direct download the PDF. And what you'll be able to do is go through all of these questions we just talked about. And you'll be able to say, okay, I need to look at my UPS, my batteries, and my software. And you'll be able to ask these questions, and it'll really just start your brain thinking, okay, is it time for replacement? Do we need to budget that for next year? And I know you're saying it's August. Why are we talking about budgeting? But, a lot of companies are making their budget numbers this time of year for next year. So we always want to just make sure you're ahead of the game and that something doesn't happen, in January or February and a battery starts warping and you're like, oh, no, I didn't factor replacement. So we just wanted to be here to kind of talk you through some of the things you should look for and have this resource here for you so that you have this and can help make your operation run as smoothly as possible. I do appreciate your time today. Again, my name is Tanya Hugnew. I am with Predictive Technology, and we are here to provide any products and services for your critical facility. We have a variety of solutions that can help any kind of facility, ranging from operational, corporate, industrial, residential, just anything. Anything that has data in it or needs backup power or enclosure, we can help you. So we're here to be your partners, and so we're here to know all this information. If you have questions, just give us a call. We are happy to walk through it with you, and I just do really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and have a great week, everyone.